Hello. We're still moving on with this series where we're ranking the best roller coaster collection in each state in the United States of America. And in one of my recent videos, somebody actually requested that I should do Georgia. So yes, your permission has been granted, sir. And this state is mainly home to one big chain park called Six Flags over Georgia, but it also has Funpot Atlanta and some few other coasters. And I have, as always, collected 10 of the best roller coasters, and I need to rank them right now. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. And now coming in at spot number 10, we got Georgia Scorch at Six Flags over Georgia, and you better be ready for hearing the word Georgia a million times in this video. And this smaller scale thrill roller coaster is actually part of the B&M stand-up coaster model, and the stand-up coaster model was very popular in the late 80s and start 90s, but now it's quite out of date. And Georgia Scorcher features your traditional looping layout by B&M, but you only have 2 inversions on this layout. But unfortunately, these stand-up coaster trains aren't really that pleasant to ride, and unfortunately this coaster also has a bit of rattle. And the layout on this coaster really starts out with a very lackluster first drop, but after this you have a decent vertical loop and you have a very whippy corkscrew inversion. And I actually like that this small roller coaster actually has a few outer bank airtime pumps and small wave turns with twists and turns, but after these inversions this roller coaster doesn't really do much. And now coming in at spot number 9, we got Great American Scream Machine at Six Flags over Georgia. And surprise surprise, we're still staying at over Georgia for the next coaster. And Great American Scream Machine is overall a decently sized wooden roller coaster made by PTC. And what can I really say about this wooden roller coaster? I really like the paint job, and look at this coaster, it is almost way better than the layout. This mid-sized wooden roller coaster features an out and back layout, and they look so beautiful going over the lake in the end. And I have heard that this park has done something about this old woody so it runs a bit smoother, but I don't really think so. But it isn't really enough because the rattle and roughness of this coaster still takes away some points for the ride experience. And Great American Scream Machine actually pulls a decent amount of G-force on the turnaround because you have some laterals, and some of the airtime hills in the end actually hit for me. And overall I couldn't really handle the roughness of this old wooden roller coaster, so please let me know in the comments, is it a back row or front row ride? And now coming in at spot number 8, we got Georgia Mountain Coaster in Heelan, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this small town name, but I think it's Heelan, I don't really know. And I actually think this is the second time I've added an alpine coaster to the list, and the Georgian Mountain Coaster really has a beautiful location but a short layout. The overall ride experience in terms of layout and pacing really depends on who you have in front of you. And if you don't have anyone in front of you, you can let this alpine coaster fly up to 28 miles per hour. And even though this Georgian Mountain Coaster is one of the smaller alpine coasters, this actually has a decent layout with some strong laterals and some small airtime pumps. And surprisingly, you can actually feel a bit of airtime on these coasters if you let it fly away. This alpine coaster actually features a very long and drawn out helix, which is very awesome. This helix actually pulls some strong lateral G-forces, and combined with this beautiful location in the Georgian forest, this is really a decent alpine coaster. And now coming in at spot number 7, we got Blue Hawk at Six Flags over Georgia. And wow, now we're back again at Six Flags over Georgia. And oh no, we got an old Vekoma MK1200 model. Ooh, and that's pretty much what everyone thinks about this old Vekoma looper, but it actually features a decent and forceful layout. And yes, Blue Hawk actually features 3 to 4 bad transitions, but the loops are very intense and you have these vest restraints on, so that's awesome. You could even argue that this Blue Hawk coaster really is underrated because all of the loops really hit, they are very intense, and the corkscrews are also a bit whippy. And Blue Hawk overall must be one of the best MK1200 models by Vekoma, because many of the other coasters of this model just feature 2 vertical loops, 2 corkscrew, and then the ride experience is done. So I would highly recommend trying this blue coaster out in Six Flags over Georgia. And now coming in at spot number 6, we got Riddler Mindbender at Six Flags over Georgia. And this roller coaster is a very old Schwarzkopf looping roller coaster from 1978. And when riding this very old Schwarzkopf looper, it almost sounds like the train is going to fall off. And Riddler Mindbender overall features a very bizarre Schwarzkopf layout because this roller coaster not only have 2 vertical loops, but it has many drops. One of my favorite elements on this coaster is actually a twisted drop going down over a small lake and then up again. This moment actually puts some strong positive G-forces. And of course you also have 2 very strong positive G-force heavy vertical loops on this coaster, but that's typical Schwarzkopf. But apart from these vertical loops and this twisted drop, this coaster is just very slow. It almost feels like a very old wooden roller coaster where it goes down, it goes up, and then it turns very slowly. So overall we got a very bizarre and old Schwarzkopf looper, but it's pretty decent. And now coming in at spot number 5, we got Batman the Ride at Six Flags over Georgia. And I have really talked a lot about these Batman the Ride clones in my recent videos. And this may sound like I'm repeating myself, but it is what it is. And overall Batman the Ride is of course a B&M inverted roller coaster. And this B&M invert features what we call the Batman the Ride clone layout. And when I rode this coaster, the train was very smooth, the pacing was fast, it was just a whippy experience. Batman the Ride really starts out great with a twisted first drop, a vertical loop, a whippy 0G roll, and yet another intense vertical loop. And then you go into this spaghetti ball section with a twist and turn and yet another corkscrew and a corkscrew. And overall I would call these clones a mid to high tier B&M invert because the pacing is great, the layout is great, and the forces are also strong. And my favorite place to sit on this coaster is actually in the back row. And now coming in at spot number 4, we got Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. And this is actually a very rare 6-seater Gerstlauer Eurofighter coaster. And my problem with these Gerstlauer models has always been the over-the-shoulder restraints, but this one actually has lap bars. And Daredevil Dive overall just features a short and very punchy layout. This roller coaster really starts out great with a vertical lift, and then you have a beyond vertical drop with ejector airtime. Even though this Gerstlauer roller coaster is really quite ratty, the lap bars really help it. And Daredevil Dive really features 3 awesome inversions. You have a very whippy dive rope, a cool Immelman inversion with a lot of pace, and then you have a slow paced hardline roll with a decent amount of hang time. And even though this roller coaster only goes 52 miles per hour, it feels even faster when you ride it. And now coming in at spot number 3, we got Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. And Six Flags Over Georgia just keeps dominating this list, but I don't see any competition anywhere. Twisted Cyclone is actually one of the smaller RMC roller coasters, and I think this might actually be one of the smallest RMC thrill coasters standing at 100 feet. This roller coaster can share the trophy with Medusa, but even though this RMC hybrid coaster is very small, this coaster really has a lot of punch still, and that's typical RMC. Twisted Cyclone starts out great with a very steep first drop, especially in the back row. You get a lot of airtime there. The riders fly through a very whippy step up underflip and then through a downwards barrel roll yet again, and then the coaster goes through a great wave turn with a lot of force. You could argue that Twisted Cyclone is a bit short, but it only stands 100 feet. And the last section on Twisted Cyclone is of course typical RMC with many great airtime hills, and then you have a 0G roll. And even though this coaster is a mid to low tier RMC coaster, overall it's just a great coaster. RMC just knows how to make phenomenal rides. Now coming in at spot number 2, we got Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. And to be honest, this might be the best Goliath named coaster in the world, and people still argue if this coaster is a hyper coaster because the height is 200 feet but the drop is only 175 feet. Oh, I'm sorry, the first drop is actually 170 feet and then the next drop is 175 feet. Overall, I would say that Goliath is a high tier B&M hyper coaster with a very lengthy and forceful layout. I really like the location of this roller coaster because it flies over a road and then it travels outside the park and then in again. The pacing is just world class on this hyper coaster, and the hills just hit with strong floater airtime. And for the non-staggered seating hyper coasters like Goliath, I would recommend sitting in the front row for the maximum amount of airtime. And apart from negative G-forces, Goliath also features some positive with a strong overbank and a helix section. Overall, just a world-class coaster. And now coming in at spot number 1, we got Air Force 1 at Funpot Atlanta. And even though Six Flags Over Georgia really has dominated this list, Funpot Atlanta actually takes number 1. And they just decided to create one of the best RMC coasters in the whole world. Air Force 1 is of course an RMC iBox roller coaster, and this just features a relentless coaster layer with many positive and negative G-forces. This coaster just features an insane pacing, and all of these elements just hit. After a great drop on Air Force 1, you have an awesome dive loop with a head chopper element, an amazing 0G stall, a world-class outer bank airtime hill, and many different airtime moments with strong amounts of airtime. And on top of that, you have 2 other inversions, a very whippy 0G roll and yet another very whippy barrel roll. And in the end, Air Force 1 just offers a relentless amount of ejector airtime hills. So overall, Air Force 1 is a high tier RMC roller coaster, perhaps one of the best in the whole world. And now we've finally made it to the end of this video. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Have I missed some roller coasters in Georgia? Please let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please give me a subscription or like or something else that would really help the channel. And till the end of the day, I'm always gonna say bye bye.